What's happening, winos? This is Quake.
And Dave.
Welcome to another episode of Cheap Wine Finder.
Lockdown edition.
Still in lockdown. It's getting harder to find wine. We're not sitting in the same studio drinking the same wine.
But we've expanded cross-country.
That's right. Today I thought we'd do something a little different and talk about one of my favorite topics, wine industry trends. And specifically today, we're going to talk about provenance. You know about that stuff?
Well, and this is going to be a technology that you may not know now, but 2 years from now is going to be commonplace.
Oh, man, I thought you would jump all over that city in Rhode Island deal.
I already did that earlier. I don't like to repeat myself.
Well, provenance is provenance is the ability to track an asset to its origin. So, in other words, imagine buying that $10,000 diamond earring, just so you can go bring a little bling to the after quarantine party. And later you find out it's fake. Or remember when you bought that members only jacket? It was like $1,000.
Still got it.
You got it home and you're like, oh man, they stopped making them in the 80s. And it was some ripoff. What did that say? Members only?
It said you're not a member, I think.
Yeah. But more importantly, pertaining to our podcast, imagine if we were to save like all of our birthday money and Christmas money and ad money from the site, which would take forever, and splurged on like a $500 bottle of Chateau Margaux.
It better be real.
Yeah. We go crack it open with our fancy friends because they always know better than we do. And we find out it's a Rudy wine.
Actually,
K.
Actually, all our friends ask us about wine, so they
Rudy
won't know.
K,
They don't know
you're killing
nothing.
me.
Who's Rudy K?
Well, if you didn't get that reference, check out Sour Grapes on Netflix. It's a documentary about this dude, Rudy K, who fooled
I know that dude. Yeah,
everyone. You know him? Oh man!
No, I didn't see I read the thing in Salon or one of those things.
Nice. Yeah, he just fooled everyone by counterfeiting these high-end auction wines.
There's so much of that going on. I mean, there's always someone in France or Italy or Spain that's getting arrested every year.
Mm-hmm. Well, our guests today have the latest emerging trend to prevent those horribly sad times, especially the wine fraud. And they are Eric Robertson. He's the product owner of Wine and Spirits, and Amy Curtis, the director of sales at Everledger. Welcome, guys.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Hey. Well,
how's lockdown treating you? Your car getting 4 months per gallon like mine?
Yeah, I keep thinking I need to stock up on the gas and put it in my my cubby hole or something.
Yeah, all the preppers are telling you, make sure you have a full tank of gas for when stuff hits the fan. So anyway, speaking of Chateau Margaux, those guys were the first wine on blockchain. And that was all you guys, right?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. As we discuss wine, you've rightly cited the high end, and that's that first growth investment grade Bordeaux that often sells in advance or sells at auction or keeps its value. And so you've got wines that benefit from security and authenticity solution on the high end, and you've also got on the low end or the the mid market end as well. So yeah,
very cool. And provenance, I'm not sure if I explained that term correctly, but can you elaborate for us a bit on what that means and how it relates to what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we call ourselves the digital transparency company. And so what that really means is that we're able to provide through a symphony of technologies, including blockchain, greater trust and sustainability in marketplaces where provenance, as you rightly put it, matters most. That really includes things like diamond jewelry, as you've mentioned, art, apparel, that sweet members only jacket, even electronic vehicle batteries and where the components for those come from and where they go to. And then, of course, today's topic, which is wine. And so provenance really means, where did it come from? What is it made of? Who made it? How can you prove it? And not just that, but we also like to look at where is it going from a sustainability, recycling, and circular economy standpoint as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of a vine to tank to barrel to truck or plane, right? All the way through to the consumer.
Correct. Yeah. So when we talk about, we'll talk about hopefully today a little bit about how we enable a digital identity in a bottle.
Cool.
And we offer a digital experience within a specific bottle. This has been done within a lot of brands for a number of years, incorporating things like QR codes to pull up a digital experience, or maybe with some brands now, augmented reality apps that sort of gamify the brand story. And so that's out there in market. What we're doing is essentially going deeper than that and providing a digital identity that's reflective of where the grape was picked, when it was picked, by whom, when it got fermented, where it was bottled, when it was shipped, who accepted custody of that shipment, and when it was sold. And not everybody, especially not an end consumer, needs to have that granularity of provenance, but there are plenty of supply chain actors from all the way from harvest to hospitality who would like to call on that information so that they can make sound decisions about investments, insurance, you name it.
Oh, yeah. People with expensive cellars full of wine would love to know for sure what they're getting. But at some point, will this change if I'm looking for a wine in the not too distant future? Can I go online and find out what store it's in or when it's going to be there? Is it going to be that down to that level, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few angles there. So what we do with a bottle is we will enable it to be read by a smartphone device. That could either be done with something as simple as a QR code, as you're no doubt familiar with, to something a little bit more complex with near-field communication chips or NFC chips that are read with an electromagnetic current that's actually in your phone. Most all Android devices have it. All new Apple phones have it. So take a look at that setting in your phone next time you're looking at your Bluetooth or your Wi-Fi. There's an NFC setting, and if you enable that, you can get your hand on an NFC chip. You can, without an app, just pull up maybe a garment's identity, a bottle's identity, and what have you. So This is all obviously emerging technology, but when you do that, then you can access the bottle's identity, and then the brand can also, to your point, update its availability in market, its scarcity in market, or when the next product might be coming out, or the next vintage.
Because the name of our website is Cheap Wine Finder, and the number one question we get emailed to us is, where can I find this? And I don't know I don't know where you live half the time, but so there is a need, for at least from our perspective, where this supply chain thing, if it goes down to the consumer level, people can just, I know where to get this wine. I know who has this. I know where it's going to be. And at some point, I know they have 4 cases or whatever it's going to, if it ever gets down to that level, which it sounds like it should.
Yeah, I think so. And as we're discussing trends in the wine industry, it wouldn't have been too long ago that somebody would have scoffed at an aluminum screw cap. Now you look at major wine producing regions such as Australia, and you'd be hard pressed to find a single cork, in the whole country.
So yeah, in Oregon, under $40 screw cap, over $40 cork.
Yeah, and I don't even know what the logic is behind it. I certainly don't mind an aluminum screw cap for a number of reasons, not including cork taint, but also just recycling and all sorts of good stuff. If
you're not going to put it away, there's really no reason to bother with the cork because the cork does give you longevity, and if you're going to drink it the same day, you're wasting a cork.
Yeah, and I'll be totally honest with you. There's rarely an event where a bottle lasts more than a day in this house, anyway. So
you're talking to the converted over here, yeah.
Moot point for me, but I think where I was going is that the wine industry trends take time, and no more so than the adoption of technology. So I think that what we're discussing here today is really the future of wine closures and packaging, even if we don't see it in market today.
Right. I mean, because one of the reasons wine today is good is technology in the winemaking section, because they're using, what's it, thermal fermentation, where they're heating up the wines to get rid of the bad elements of wine, which is one of the reasons inexpensive wines are better than they used to be. And I mean, there's all sorts of technology that was kind of difficult to do in the past, which are kind of easy because of technology. And it makes sense to that and go over to the supply chain where, it's still guys making deals and putting things in trucks and delivering it with, in cases to stores, to be able to actually put the technology there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there is an enormous amount that we can do to capture events in the supply chain, and then enable brands to tell more authentic stories to their consumers by sharing those events. And on that end, I think here in the United States, a majority of estate wineries, at least so far as I've heard, they don't really think that their bottles are valuable enough to authenticate. And I think that, because we started out the conversation with Chateau Margaux, and I think that actually misses the point, valuable enough to authenticate, because using emerging technologies like this allow brands to tell an authentic story. Imagine a rich tasting room experience with the grower or the vintner directly from the bottle to your smartphone, and ideally to your club list sign up as well. I think that's where the real value is.
Oh, I can see that being able to be sold, because wine that think they're not good enough for the technology, your wine's not good enough. What are you talking about? I think there's room for maneuvering there.
Sure. I think what I mean there is that if you were to approach a craft estate winery that produces an exceptional Cabernet Sauvignon under $50, and then you tell them that your solution has been widely accepted in investment grade Bordeaux, they say, well, that's for an investment grade wine.
Right. Yeah, I'm spending money, but I think as time goes on, the cost aspect will go down too.
Absolutely. I think on the cost front, it's quite interesting. When you talk to a winery and how they make decisions about packaging. So labels are going to run in a state winery anywhere between a quarter or a US dollar, 25 cents to $1. And you can expect probably another 25 cents to 75 cents for the cork or the cap. And I think to create a digital identity and include it in this packaging, whether it be in the label or the cap, is going to run on the high end of those packaging expenses. But I personally don't see it as a packaging expense at all. It's more like a marketing investment.
Yeah, and I can also see where the distributors would also use that, which could, because they can also log into that, which would help them, and you can kind of spread the cost out a little bit on that too.
Well, here's one thought, which is the exciting prospect or the promise of blockchain technology, is that we remove distributors, we remove intermediaries, and we enable brands to make direct-to-consumer sales and be compensated directly in a peer-to-peer transaction. That's
also, getting rid of all the prohibition-era laws is probably something that's going to happen in the future too.
It really is quite interesting how arguably archaic our wine and spirit distribution system is, in the United States, and how prohibitive it is. I often go to the wine wall here in Seattle, and I'm able to more easily find, an Argentinian Malbec or a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand than I am a nice cab from just across the mountains in Walla Walla. That's to distribution problems.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah,
Eric's coming to us all the way from Seattle.
Yes, by the way, yes, calling it from Seattle.
Yeah, so I think there is some movement there too, because more and more states are doing the direct sales route, which 3 or 4 years ago there was only a handful that were doing that.
And you made a good point last time we talked. I think I see this coming down, and somebody like Charles Smith could do up a $20 or $30 bottle of wine, and he wants it to get into your hands exactly as he intended. You know what I mean? So yeah. I could see interest in that, even for approaching the more affordable side of things.
Sure. I think counter to that is that there's a lot of, as you guys will no doubt attest, a lot of really fantastic value wines that are full of character and so-called terroir. And in the industry today, you see that they're stacked up against these unstructured, sugary bulk wines in the same sort of craft-looking packaging, or what this wine economist Mike Besseth he terms a placeless Mick wine, and I really like that turn of phrase. And so, yeah, you can enable craft brands that are selling at the $2 chuck price range the ability to differentiate themselves as to why you should pick their wine, or maybe pay a couple of dollars more for it.
Yeah, true that. And then this is all okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, I was just going to say this. To work, this kind of starts with the producer, right? It's not like an importer can buy a bunch of really high-end wines and go, okay, this is mine now, but I'm going to sell it, and I want to make sure all of my stuff's legit, and start there, right? Because he doesn't have any visibility into what happened to that wine before it got to him.
Yeah. This is a fantastic point. So there is an opportunity for that importer to do that and make a claim with a varying level, of confidence, and saying that I imported the wine, and I have the advanced shipment notice, and I have all the customs documentations to say that it was indeed imported from France, Italy, United States, or what have you. So there's opportunities there, and certainly as we talk about import market, China, soon to be the largest consumer group for imported wines in the world. And we've discussed as a group before that every 1 out of every 2 bottles of Bordeaux sold in China is considered fake. So there's an enormous opportunity for importers to differentiate the sort of security and trust that they're offering, their high-end hospitality venues, stores and whatnot, by using something like this.
I think we should get into the fake Chinese Bordeaux business. It seems to be lucrative.
Yes, I mentioned I had for years consulted in China in the food and beverage space and the luxury supply chain space, and I do recall running across one fellow who totally confided in me that he had made a good deal of money and had purchased a really nice Porsche SUV at the time by selling a Lafitte, spelled F-E-A-T. Showed me the label. That is a true story.
So he didn't even really hide the fact that it wasn't real.
No. I was in Beijing about 6 months ago, and I had picked up a bottle of Benfolds with a B, and these are all over the place. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's like your Mumbers only jacket.
Did you actually drink the wine, or?
So I have a penchant for Chinese domestically produced wine, things like Changyu, Changchang, and Dynasty. If you ever get a case of Dynasty, you're in for a treat. So the Chinese domestic market does pride itself as a wine producing region, and they surely do have some really great wines. You may have heard that Lafitte Rothschild actually has a vineyard in Shandong province to essentially accommodate the demand for Bordeaux without depleting, France's reserve.
My. Of course, Rothschilds everywhere. I just went to a luncheon with the winemakers from South America. So they're from Chile. So it seems like any country, there's one of their wines somewhere.
It is the new Mondavi, it seems. Yeah.
There you go.
Eric, if you think this is an appropriate time, could you take us through the process a little bit? So you sell to the producer. The producer goes, I'm making something here that I need to protect all the way down to the end consumer. And so he buys the technology, and there's actually NFC tags embedded like in the cork or the label or the capsule.
Yeah. The way that we've approached it is that in the supply chain, you could approach all sorts of actors that are going to benefit from this solution: growers, negotiants, all the way down to, as we've talked about, distributors, retailers. But the one spot where we focus is the brand itself, and the labels that showcase that brand that are going onto the bottles. That seems to be the easiest place for us to start. And it's the brands themselves that can now start to bring in the growers to attest to the actual produce, the vintner to attest to crush, fermentation details, and what have you. And the same goes for spirits as well, distillation, etc.
Wow, like what grapes are in this bottle and what row they were in and that kind of granularity?
Yeah, correct. And I think that there are certain wine geeks out there that would like to know the percentage of their Barossa Valley Shiraz, what percentage is actually Shiraz, and what else has it been cut with, or
sure,
what have you. So there's some value there. So we don't really disrupt the normal bottling process. So if you have a digital identity that is created by the brand themselves using all sorts of transaction details about where they got the grapes, what percentage of varietal is in the bottle, which appellation it came from when it was harvested, then we can create a digital identity out of that, and then we record that immutably on blockchain. And then there's parts that we enable the brand to be able to update themselves, much like a website, like a Wix or a Squarespace website, that they can continually update sort of evergreen marketing content, like tasting notes, good pairing, and maybe a bio about the vintner, etc.
Gotcha.
And once we have all that digital identity all set up, we encode NFC chips with the same sort of security standards that credit cards are encoded with, and we send those to the bottler. And those can be sent in multiple formats. They could be on a reel-to-reel inlay that go behind the label, and we've done that with one Napa Valley brand called Appalachian Earth. And then alternatively, they could be in the cap, or they could be a sticker, or they could be actually a part of the sleeve that goes over the cork. So there's a variety of ways that the chip can be applied, but essentially it integrates at the point of bottling. And then in the case of your Chateau Margaux or an investment grade wine that has been bottled a long time ago, you can apply a security tag on top of its closure or an NFC sleeve there as well. So there's a lot of options.
Oh, right. So you can, I heard it, you can tell if it's been opened or if it got too hot.
Yes, exactly. So if let's just say, for instance, at the point of bottling, we were to put tamper-resistant sort of PVC capsule over the top of either a cork or an aluminum closure, and that capsule has a tamper-resistant tag on there, with some adhesive, so you can't just pull it off. So if you were to scan that bottle, and it hadn't been tampered with, it would show you that the integrity of that bottle is intact. And then if you were to open that capsule and then scan it again, you would see not only that it was opened, but if it had been previously scanned, the date that it was opened. So that's really good for fraud, but it's also helpful on the spirit end of things. If you have a nice bottle of scotch, you can scan it and see when it was opened.
Excellent.
And then you mentioned temperature. Sure. If you have a case of wine that you need to have temperature controlled, champagne is a fantastic example, oftentimes being left out in the hot sun for import. You could have an NFC or RFID, I should say, temperature reader on that case. And then when that temperature reader is scanned, it is recorded on blockchain against that digital identity as well. So you could pull up that digital identity as a brand and say, hey, I shipped this large amount of Krug champagne to this hospitality area in China, and I can see that they accepted it. I can see that they accepted it at the correct temperature, and I can see that they confirmed that the integrity was intact.
Yeah, that's very important for high-end wine sales, especially when someone's going to lay down a wine for 15, 20 years, only to find out that before he bought it, it was in a truck at 120 degrees for all day long. And it's now not any good. I mean, there's a lot of, I know a few people in high-end wine shops were dying to have that technology.
Sure. And I think from the brand's perspective as well, they might want to know, was my wine really sold to 10,000 individuals within a new market, or was it just dumped? Which can happen.
Oh yeah, is my importer actually taking care of my wine, or am I getting a bad reputation because of his practices? I mean, it does a lot of different. There's a lot of different things you can do with information.
It's kind of heartbreaking. There had been for a number of years an ability to get a visa in Australia if you were going to invest in the exportation of Australian wine. And so you can imagine if you were a Chinese national who wanted to have an Australian residency visa, then you could help an Australian wine producer access a new Chinese market. And so they would do that. And of course, that wine producer would have to invest in all sorts of, new compliant packaging and get new lab tests and there's all sorts of expenses involved in getting your wine that's traditionally has a domestic market out into an export market.
Oh yeah.
And the reason that I say it's sad is that a lot of these so-called wine exporters weren't actually paying for the distribution of that wine. They were just ending up in dormant warehouses. So little things like this solve for problems like that. If you're going to invest in getting into a new market, you might as well have as much visibility into that new market as possible.
No kidding. Yeah, I mean, especially where you're going into a new market, being able to verify, especially somewhere like China, where the practices might not be different or maybe foreign to you. I mean, anything you can have on your side sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
And so this goes all the way down to the consumer. So where does it end? Like, is it the wine shop guy does something as you buy the bottle and it says, okay, this is done. This is where this bottle ends up. Or what if I gift that bottle? Does it kind of keep going?
Yeah. So there's a number of ways that you could approach this. And I think it depends on the brand. If a brand is doing well, it's vertically integrated with a brick and mortar retail point of sale. Total Wine comes to mind. We've worked with some brands in France where that seems to be the case. Then you can have sales staff actually transfer ownership of wine at the point of sale. And that seems to be a pretty smooth and seamless process. Again, if you're kind of vertically integrated there. If you're not, there's other ways to do it. You could have some sort of special cipher or token that is included in the packaging. So imagine a really nice bottle of wine or a spirit where it usually comes with like a certificate of authenticity, that little piece of paper with gold foil on there that says whether or not it's real. Now you could actually have like a little token in there, and you could claim that token to make sure that the bottle that you have is not only real, but you own it. There are solutions out there in the market that do that, but they don't do it by actually having that one unique bottle in your hand that has a very, very long unique ID. The only way to claim ownership of that bottle with that number is to actually have the bottle in your hand.
Whoa. This is going to be a problem. See, my mom's going to know when I re-gift a bottle of her Rancho Zabaco.
But the other end of it, not just focused on security, the other end of it is, imagine this, right? Imagine you have a club list member, and that club list member buys a case of wine. And then around the holidays, they transfer ownership of each of those bottles to their friends, so that by the time that it reaches their friend and their friend scans it, they see their name on this bottle's digital identity. Now you as a brand have just increased your potential newsletter list 12x. So your ability to start to not only retain, your club list membership, but actually grow it is a really cool feature of this.
It is. That's pretty cool. And what's involved with that? So I buy a case and then I start handing them out at Christmas. When you say transfer ownership, am I in an app on my phone doing this?
Yeah, exactly. So it's difficult given the medium of a podcast, but I'll give it my best. So I've got my bottle in my hand. It belongs to me. I claimed it at the point of sale, either by information that was on my receipt or it was part of the associated packaging. The mind can wander there. But suffice it to say, I claimed ownership of this bottle, and now I'd like to give it to you. I simply tap it with my phone, say that I'd like to transfer ownership to you. I put in my email address, get the token that proves that, it's the two-factor authentication. It proves that I am who I am, just like, any time that you got to get a password retrieval at your bank.
So I can't go into the wine store and just start tapping bottles to transfer
Correct.
Ownership because
it's really funny, Mike, that you mentioned that. As I would encourage you to do that, there are certain brands of champagne that you can do that. You can claim as many bottles of champagne as you like, and never actually buy them.
Oh, nice.
Now, in the scenario that I'm offering you, that loophole is closed. It's no longer a marketing gimmick. It's an actual, feature.
Gotcha. And then the authorities will come looking for me.
I don't know if there's any follow-up check as to how many bottles, are claimed of cognac or of champagne.
Yeah, who knows what the law is against that?
All right, so go ahead. Sorry. Then you transfer ownership to your buddy that you're going to gift the wine to.
Yeah. So I've got a bottle in my hand. I transfer ownership to you, and you'll get an email saying you just received a really nice bottle of wine, and then I can give it to you, or I can ship it to you, or what have you. This, of course, is a really easy gifting mechanism. Again, it personalizes that bottle of wine rather than having a laser engraver on site to do it. That's a lot of cost. So it personalizes the bottle of wine. And then it also gives the brand a little bit more opportunity to connect with more people. That's consumer engagement. But now you can imagine if you wanted to transfer to me 1,000 bottles of wine, and I do so because the condition is right, the unit amount is right, and now I own that wine. Now I officially owe you the money that you are owed.
Verification of sales then.
Correct. And so we have a mechanism through smart contract settlement to essentially record the acceptance of those goods because they've met the specific acceptance criteria. That is recorded on the blockchain. It's immutable. Everybody can see it. And now it's automatically going to trigger payment to you. So this really transforms and transcends somewhat old and unfair, consignment arrangements.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we knew a couple of importers who they would contract with someone from France or whatever to bring in wine, and they paid them partial money and never showed up, only to find out that 7 other importers had the same problem with that guy.
Yes, we call that the curse of double spending. And we definitely are able to solve for that.
And it's one of those things right now, you just live and learn. People who got stuck before goes, well, you should have asked me. But yeah, now there's a solution to that problem. That guy's not out of business. Just no one's going to want to, he's been found out.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Eric, that's one of it's transparency out there in the marketplace. So it really makes sure that everybody's doing what they need to do. Anybody who touches the wine or, the asset that, here we're talking about wine, that, if they're truthful, it's authentic, in each stage that it goes through. And it kind of helps alleviate the bad guys as well.
Exactly. You cannot 100% guarantee that you're going to eradicate fraud. But you can do an effort like this. It makes it 100 times more difficult to commit fraud, and then a lot easier to rout out fraudulent actors.
Yeah, and plus it lets you get at least some proof that something happened. It's not my word against your word. There is some information down the line that's saying what's what. So you actually have a leg to stand on if everything goes wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, this is where I say conversations like this typically result in a lot of wineries stateside saying, yeah, but that's not really my problem. My wines aren't necessarily valuable enough that I need a solution like this. This technology is not necessarily, for me. Right. And so I think that's where, we focus a little less on the supply chain end of it. And we start talking more about, okay, well, you might not necessarily be interested in routing out bad actors who are trying to defraud your brand, but you might be interested in knowing where your consumers are, If you've gotten into a new, maybe you didn't even know that your wine's being distributed in a new market, and you don't even know that there's a peak of consumers in that market that are tapping your bottles, and you didn't even know that once they tap your bottle, that 40% of them are coming to your website, and of the 40% that are coming to your website, 5% are signing up for your newsletter. So things like that are an immense value add, I think, to U.S. wineries that, they might not have the bottle value that would warrant these security measures, but they sure do have a need to improve those direct-to-consumer relationships. Which is
the whole thing they're trying to do. I mean, everything is marketing with wine. Isn't that pretty much a third of the cost of wine nowadays or more?
Yeah, actually, I think, if I am not mistaken, that about 2% of every bottle sold goes toward marketing, and 4% of it goes towards packaging, and then the rest, sort of gets split up. So 2% per bottle, right? So you can imagine, if you're Absolute Vodka and you're spending 2% per bottle, your marketing budget is epic. If you're a small estate winery, your reach is not really extending beyond whether or not you used a particular typeface or maybe some gold foil on your label that would be more eye-catching.
Yeah, I mean, and they're probably trying to do everything at the cellar door anyway to make more money. A lot of these places. I mean, it doesn't always fit for every single person, but I could see some of the larger chains who can easily lose track of where their wines are going couldn't necessarily like to have everything tightened up with this kind of technology. I mean, a Gallo, who is the largest family-owned winery in the world, probably needs this, right?
Oh, I think it's fit for purpose for a large consortium like Gallo or Mondavi, but I think that there's value for it as well for a family winery too.
Oh yeah, because there is a prestige aspect of this too. Because if the first growth Bordeaux's are doing it, well, look at me. I see my wine in that same light. That does help.
Exactly. So for me, back in 2007, for myself, I took a misstep away from an otherwise thriving career in an enterprise software company to open up a coffee shop in Seattle, and also just before the housing market crash. So you could talk about steep competition and bad timing.
Yeah.
But the area in which that business did succeed was taking a commodity of coffee that had been sort of categorically defined by Starbucks and justifying an added expense and really starting to forge value by elevating that cup's contents with a better story or word of the day provenance, right? Mm-hmm. So it was direct trade, it was family estate, it was organically grown, it was award-winning, or we had a staff that could show you how to prepare it or tell you about the tasting notes. So, treating coffee like fine wine, offering that craft experience, it's pretty commonplace today. There are cities all over the world with cafes like that do it. Mm-hmm. Back then, it was somewhat new, and it really helped coffee brands differentiate and create kind of entirely new categories for themselves. And so I see that wine industry is really poised to sort of do that all over again. How do you stand out on the shelf? Is it a flashier label, like I said, or like a rating from Robert Parker or James Suckling? What do you do to stand out? Personally, for me, if I were a family estate winery, I would just pull the label entirely. Keep the mandatory barcode and content items on the back, and just put in an NFC tap here sticker on the front and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, because I can see everybody's got a smartphone, and all of a sudden your phone just comes alive with information. I mean, even though it might be a bare bones label, it no longer is, because your phone has 10 times, 1,000 times more information.
Yeah.
And no app required. That's pretty cool.
Either that or skulls on the label. Yeah, we have a theory that any wine that has skulls on the label is good.
I think you might have something there. Maybe I'll. Personally, I have this. This is totally true. I have this philosophy that you can choose the best salsa or the best wine in the store by the worst label. because because hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Why do we need to invest in in our market?
Yeah, the good stuff doesn't need to be flashy.
Right, exactly. Mike mentioned no app necessary. And I think that if we just linger on that for a second, and we're talking about how this sort of technology gets used in market, you don't want to download a clunky app that you're only going to use once to try and interact with a bottle in the grocery store, let alone at a nice dinner out. Right. So there's a huge thing. And so you can imagine if you've consigned a bunch of bottles to a really fine dining establishment where if you can make an impact with those diners, then you can increase repeat sales among them. But then unfortunately, they're just leaving, your bottles open for too long, they're oxidized for too long or what have you. So you can imagine just like that little add-on there that diners could like tap that bottle and know exactly when it was opened, or your bar manager could do the same to sort of protect, that experience and that brand integrity.
Oh yeah. There's nothing worse than going somewhere to have have a bad wine. Like you don't go to a beer bar and order a wine just because you don't know how long it's been sitting there.
It's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man,
I think actually Amy
had
that experience with me here in Seattle.
Yeah, you have to be careful. They have to have a high turnover. It's tough. That's why wine bars and what have you cost so much, because they got to make their money on the first glass. But if they had a way of not doing that, I mean, you could get it. Of course, they don't really want to make it cheaper either. You want the experience and all the circuses that go with it. But yeah, but knowing what you're getting is always a good thing with any product, much less wine.
For sure. So it'll be interesting to see. As we've discussed previously, you're looking at large, really big, volume brands like 19 Crimes, which is a trade wine estate property, Phantom Wines, which is a Bogle property. They're using these digital experiences, and at least if you hear from them, it's working out.
Does that mean we're going to get a digital experience with the Snoop Dogg 19 Crimes? It's coming this summer. Snoop Dogg.
Are you serious? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, and I like to see what they're doing with your product on that, because I know you have some you work with them on things.
Well, we don't actually work with them specifically on anything, right now.
Okay.
We definitely bring style to a digital experience, but we're also more substance focused.
Oh, okay. But look, you will probably be drinking Snoop Dogg Shiraz before too long.
I might give it to somebody. I can't guarantee I'm gonna.
Oh, you gotta try. I don't know.
What's it called? Doggy style red.
I'm not sure. I don't know. I just saw the label. That's all.
There's some good ones out there.
Yeah, I've had AC/DC red wine too. So you name it.
I'm drawing a blank on all of my favorite cheeky wine names, but I'm sure I'll come back with you.
Australia used to be great for that. I mean, but they all kind of disappeared. Yeah, most of them try to be a little bit higher tone, I guess.
My favorite's the Maryland Merlot. And then when we were at Mardi Gras, the wine parade went by, and there was like about 50 old ladies dressed as Maryland, and they had sashes. Maryland Merlot.
Actually, that's not a bad Merlot, though. It's actually a Napa Merlot, I believe. At least there's like a couple different levels of it, but it's not bad.
That's fine.
The crew of Chewbacca's. Oh, no, that was the crew of the Cork.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Sounds like we're winding down with questions. You guys got anything to add, or?
No, I just really, I'm sure Amy does, but for my part, I really appreciate it. I apologize if I pulled my own string and gave you more than you probably wanted to know, but it's kind of it's an exciting area to be in.
Oh yeah,
and starting to see again, just craft experiences, craft producers having a fighting chance amongst an increasingly global sort of wine wall. And you could say the same thing about apparel. You could say the same thing about gemstones.
Sure.
And technology moves so fast nowadays. I mean, things that were commonplace 2 years ago are now out of date, and this is going to be commonplace before you know it.
I think so. I think you're right.
I can't wait to play with. Amy's got a tag for me or something. And
I do, and I'm
what's on it.
I will drop it off at your house this weekend. now that it stopped raining.
Contactless delivery.
And then you can send one to Dave.
Nice.
She won't go up your 27 stairs though, Mike. She'll leave it at the bottom.
Yeah.
Well, right.
One of my favorite things to do here at Everledger is to encode 9 tags to an authentic experience, and then 1 tag to "Never Going to Give You Up" by Rick Astley. So I hope that you don't have the Rickroll tag.
Exactly, because that's what he sent me, was like 9 different tags. So good luck with what I can.
That's awesome. Well, okay. Cool. We really appreciate your time today. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, guys.
You guys.
A lot of fun.
Bye.
And everybody, you heard it here first.
All right.
Keep an eye out.
Keep
Thank you.
Bye-bye.